and just check the screen. It says record. It's a little red paper.
David, I think this ice.
C'est que j'ai pas besoin
There
d'ice.
is nothing in the
C'est
house.
juste que j'aime ni ça ni ça.
What?
I just don't like this or this, so I want water. I hate Diet Coke, it's disgusting.
It is.
Thank you. And this, I won't
You'll
try.
drink it if it's brown liquid with a red bottle, but you won't drink an orange liquid. Okay, got it.
Not if I'm not used to it. Diet Coke is really terrible.
Awful.
In
It's
the US,
bitter.
at least.
What,
In
better
France, it's a little bitter. I can drink it. Here, I mean, I won't drink at all if it's the only choice.
On
Better off with water.
principle, I refuse to eat or drink anything that's low
Diet?
diet,
I agree.
or low calorie or
I
low
agree.
fat or.
I agree, but there is a problem with yogurt. There is a very good brand. Well, it's not Halal Israel, but
Which
I
one?
take it. Stonyfield,
Stonyfield yogurt.
Stonyfield,
So
and they're
good.
all low fat. Yeah.
Not only low fat, you can get fat free.
No, yeah, fat free or low fat. I want
on
I
principle.
want full fat,
Delicious.
Oh,
okay.
but it's very good.
I
So
don't
I
eat
still buy it.
margarine. I don't eat. If it's not animal origin saturated fat, I have nothing to do with it. And
Do you want water?
a little bit would be good. Thank you. So,
Someone was telling me about margarine they got that actually was dairy. And they were using
Yeah.
it for a lot of their flesh meals, and they just thought, oh,
I've
margarine.
been
They
trained.
didn't even look.
I've been
Yeah, but
trained to buy one
that's already
recently at
mutar.
Fairway. They're all dairy.
That's
All
already
of them.
mutar.
yeah, so I don't deal with margarine at all in any of its forms.
Isn't that bitul?
The question is, why is it dairy? If it's made on dairy,
Even if it was dairy,
it's the margarine.
It was totally unintentional, and when it was mixed in, it was already
There are serious
bitul.
questions as to what would be. First of all, what do you use it? You're using it to bake cakes that you can eat after you eat meat. So anyway, even if it was a little bit of dairy, it's probably null and void. And then the introduction of eating after you ate meat is already.
No, the problem is if you use it for meat.
Yeah, you put it on top
You
of
put
the
it on
steak. basically,
instead
yeah.
of oil.
It is an American tradition of putting butter on top of a steak.
It's also
Yeah.
in the.
It's a
in
very
France.
delicious.
Yeah. By the way, did you know that steak tartare was invented?
Speaking from experience.
Yeah.
Steak tartare
I never tried one.
invented here. You didn't have the bison at the.
Ah yes, I did. Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah, I did.
So you know what what it was originally called? Steak à l'américaine. In the 1920s and 30s, the French were caught onto this concept because America was so full of beef. There were different ways to eat it, so they just grind it. They put a little bit of egg here, and the French.
I
bread.
loved it.
Steak
The
à
galette
l'américaine.
was very good. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Anyway, we have a lot to cover tonight, and the time is always crazy. I get more and more questions every day that goes by, so I'm trying to address them in a semi-public forum, at least that we can go on record as having answered the more pertinent, more relevant questions. So I was asked this week, I think at least 2 or 3 times, about tabletops and countertops. Although you will find, I don't understand, even to be honest with you, the Al Yosef talks about doing this. Pouring hot water on your countertop, on your marble, on your table.
Yeah.
None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. There is no reason you should be destroying your tables or your countertops. For mica, by the way, that's how you remove it, is by pouring boiling water on it. It pops up, it starts to buckle. You don't cook on it. There are those who have the custom to cover these surfaces with plastic or with aluminum, cover them with both. You can burn them with a torch if you want. Halachically speaking, we ascertained last week, we made it very clear, we torch your plastic fridge too, we ascertained that there is no necessity to kasher anything that isn't used for cooking, period. It's just not. It's not. I can take a boiling hot pot of kosher for Passover, schena, cholent, I put it down on the table, I'm going to destroy the paint, and it might cause the wood to warp a little bit, but I'm not going to transfer any flavor. It can be boiling hot as long as there's no liquid in between. There is no transference of flavor.
Even there would be.
It's not, and even if it were, who's to tell me that I once put boiling hot chametz that spilled out of a pot onto the table in such a way that I could absorb it? It's been more than 24 hours. The table was cleaned. I did recommend you clean it with a sponge. Don't call me reform. But to go any further than this is already a touch much. I hate to burst your bubble. Some of the stuff is a waste of time. So.
I'm sorry, I took it. It's there.
Okay.
It's M&M's.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
These things are always there.
Yeah, always.
Anyway, so questions were asked about this.
You
ordered food?
Yeah.
Who ordered?
I did.
What'd you order?
Pizza.
I ordered basar b'chalav apparently.
Why? What happened?
We can discuss at the intermission. Anyway, the questions this week ranged very broadly over the sale of the Hametz, so it's a good thing to bring up. First of all, the advent of the sale of the Hametz. Okay, this is not mentioned in the Talmud. Yes, it's true. The Talmud does discuss things like Jews borrowing Hametz or lending Hametz. What happens if violence? Just violence.
Terrible.
Yeah. Really, it's like the factory bells. They ring like, when they have to get something. Someone's waiting for you at the door. So, we have this concept of selling the chametz. What is it based on? How helpful or useful is it? What are the reasons for its invention? And if there is any point to not participating or to excluding certain items. All very very valid topics for discussion. We get questions on this all the time, pretty much every year. So first of all, it was a big shock to some of the women that texted us this week. Is it possible to sell a Hametz Gemur? Okay, Hametz Gemur is total, complete Hametz. There's no discussion. I have a loaf of bread in my fridge or a pie of pizza, and I decided to make use of the contract for the sale of Hametz. So what am I doing? I'm effectively selling the Hametz to a non-Jew. There have been a lot of complaints, a lot of disputes, a lot of arguments about this. At the end of the day, this was founded, the reason this was invented, the concept of selling your Hametz was introduced specifically for those who work in industries where it was impossible to produce what it was that you were producing without owning Hametz over the course of Pesach. Okay? The process of fermenting beer, so the brewery, the process of producing what whiskey came later, the distillery was invented later.
Was it the conditioning process, right? Of beer? It takes weeks.
No, that's lager, that's something else. Lager in German literally means stock. So to have something in stock, it's beer that was stored cold over a period of a few months. And they found that it mellowed out the flavor. And it took out some of what they call the bottle shot. Whenever you bottle a fermented beverage, wine or beer, right after you bottle it, the product is somewhat unpalatable. And some of the compounds have to come down, break down, or mix with others in order to become a little bit more pleasant. So aging the wine is this process to the extreme. But bottling it right away and drinking it is usually not so pleasant on the palate. It's for a whole bunch of reasons. Still yeast mixed in it, and the yeast settles down. Other processes that you can identify either by eye or by taste. Anyhow, the way these processes work is that you take the grains, you mash them. It's referred to as mash in English. You take the mash, you add water to it, you cook it to a certain temperature. Generally, you don't boil it too hard. And then as it cools, what you're doing is you're extracting sugars. You're actually activating enzymes that convert the starch into sugars that are perceptibly sweet to us. And then, as the product ferments, it ferments as far as it's going to go, or you can arrest the fermentation at a given stage. Then you have to bottle it. Now, people don't do this measured to the gram. I mean, you can measure your ingredients however you want. Beer is pure chametz, there's no question, as is whiskey and every other alcohol, bourbon, scotch, all these different takes on it. Beer is pure chametz.
Well, wheat-based alcohols.
Or barley-based.
Grain-based.
Beer is barley, yeah.
But vodka.
Beer, whiskey, vodka for sure, all these...
vodka for sure what?
Chametz.
It's potatoes.
That's a joke. That is like that, and it goes up there with giraffes. We don't know where to shech them, and the hindquarters.
No, there's no such thing as potato vodka.
Potato vodka is kosher.
So this is it's possible to extract alcohol from potatoes. It's in no way profitable. There are very nasty kosher for Passover vodkas.
But Absolute, Smirnoff, any of these.
Oh, they're all made of grains.
No, that's wheat.
It's all wheat.
Lukowsa is a reasonable Russian potato vodka, and Glacier is a reasonable quality.
Is it Absolute is kosher for Passover?
No.
They're all made from wheat. The best of my knowledge, they're all made. Yeah, they're all made from wheat. There might be some that are fermented from potatoes. You know, by the way, that the Russians have a whole variety of things they ferment for alcohol, like bread, kvass. They actually have a drink that they make by putting bread in water until it goes funky. That's filtering out the bread and they have, it's basically like almost a beer-like beverage that's made from fermenting bread. You've got to be in need of help, to ferment bread. At any rate, so these processes of fermentation, they take time, they're expensive, they're complicated, and generally speaking, you end up with things in stock. What were to happen if the Jewish brewers, right, the ones who are producing beer, were not allowed to maintain their stock? They had to destroy it before Pesach. Because by the Torah, it sounds like this is the case. If you read the simple reading of the Torah, lo yora'eh, lo yimatzeh. It's a surah for you to have Hametz in your possession. It's a surah for you to own it, whether it's visible to you or not. It should not be found in your possession, is how we read that pasuk. And if I happen to own beer over Pesach, I'm violating the surah midoraita. I am transgressing one of the 613 mitzvot in the Torah. Without even drinking it, just having it is a surah. If I need to destroy my entire stock, okay, let's step away from the biblical interdiction. If I need to destroy my entire stock, what I'm doing is I'm effectively raising the price of kosher beer. Or I cede the entire industry to the non-Jews. You want to drink beer, it has to be produced by non-Jews. Because for you to drink beer that was produced by a Jew, he would by necessity have to have wasted a certain amount of stock or stopped producing before Pesach, such that he's out of business for a few weeks, maybe for a few months. Throw in Kemach Hashan, and the guy never makes a living. Incidentally, what's the name of the only German Jewish school left in North America?
German school?
German Jewish school.
Ramaz.
My kids happen to attend. Ramaz is not German in any way.
Breuers.
Breuers, okay, so Breuer in German is a brewer, right? That's Löwenbräu. You have all these like German brands of beers. So literally, the last name Rav Breuer, who was famous for being a Talmid Chacham, his family clearly was descended of brewers. So if you had Jews brewing beer in Germany, apparently they figured out a way to do this without being out of business half the year. Think about this. I have to stop producing or destroy whatever I did produce, whatever I invested in before Pesach. And the time it takes me to go ahead and restart another batch of fermentation after Pesach, assuming I still have grains at my disposal, would effectively put me at least 6 or 8 weeks out before I can sell product. So either Jews can't do this for a living, or they do, but it's really expensive if you do it this way. So, as Rav Kedar, Zechat Tzadik Livracha, my Rosh Kollel used to say, real rabbis don't see problems, they see solutions. There's an issue, we have to address it. It can't be impossible, by the way. It wasn't like everybody was producing commercially back in the day. People brewed for themselves. So if you wanted to have beer to drink, and it probably was safer than the water, you needed to pretty much brew in your basement or in your house or in the farm or wherever it was that you had some space. People produced their own wine. It wasn't an uncommon thing. So the solution came up like this. You can sell the product to a non-Jew. If you are selling the way standard sales take place, the sale is irrevocable. That means I'm going to sell you, Mr. Christian Callahan, all of the bottles of beer and bottles of whiskey that I have in stock. You purchase them, maybe at a certain discount. Already I'm getting something back for it. If I don't want to have to deal with this discount where it puts me out of business, we can work out such a thing as a sale that is, we're not going to say conditional, we're going to say that it's somehow reversible. Not that the sale never took place, but that the sale will be nullified and the ownership of the Hametz will change if certain conditions aren't met. So if I devise the sale, the contract, because we don't have copies of these ancient contracts. They used to do this. This practice goes back 600-700 years. We don't know how the old contracts were worded. As far back as we can tell, they were selling them, and then you would either buy it back after Pesach. The price went up, the price went down. It was something you had to absorb, such as the nature of commodities. Or you can word the sale the way we do it today, which is actually pretty clever, very sophisticated. So I'm selling my Hametz to Ryan Callahan, former captain of the New York Rangers. So I devise a contract that says, Mr. Callahan, you're going to purchase all the Hametz in my possession, okay? And it includes, but is not limited to, ABC, XYZ. You're not going to pay me all the money now. He may not be able to. He might have money, but may not want to spend it all in one shot. So he can say, okay, I'm going to give you a down payment on the Hametz, at which point the Hametz becomes mine. It reverts to my possession. It's in my domain. And the sale is in full effect once you put a down payment. You can put a down payment on a house and you get it. and you have to continue paying the mortgage afterwards. You put a down payment on a car, you can drive it off the lot, you'll continue to make your payments, not to make your payments, but the car will have belonged to you for a certain period of time, and then ownership title needs to be revoked or reverted back to the salesman or the company that sold it to you if you defaulted on your payments. So the way the contract is worded is that Mr. Callahan's going to put a deposit on the Hametz that's in my possession, and for that matter, everybody else's. And the sale is final. And if he doesn't bring me the remainder of the money by the time the stars come out on the 8th day of Pesach, then the sale will at that time be considered null, and the ownership of the Hametz will revert back to the original proprietors, the original owners. So the sale was valid during Pesach. It's not reversed, which is to say the sale never happened. The Hametz stayed ours because he didn't make good on the payment that he owed me up to 8 days later. The sale will from that point on be considered nullified, at which point it reverts back to the ownership of the Jews who were originally in possession of it. Questions and comments and concerns that were voiced about this process, which clearly has been going on for centuries, by the way. Perhaps in the beginning this was devised for people who produced significant quantities of chametz. Okay, bakeries, it wasn't so much a question because bread didn't really last longer than a day in antiquity. How could you keep it from going stale, getting hard? So what they would do is they would use the sale for people whose business, whose parnasah, in whole or in part, was based on chametz. It became more and more popular because there are a lot of upshots to it. For example, I can sell things that I may not even realize I own. If I word the contract, why would I need to do that?
You need the bitul. You have the bitul before Pesach. So why you need to do that?
This is the first Tosafot of Masechet Pesachim. The first comment of Tosafot, because the chapter begins Masechet Pesachim. It's a long chapter, a long Masechet, long tractate. It begins on the night of the 14th. We search for the Hametz, etc. Tosafot say, so no. Why did the Chachamim decree that we should be searching for the Hametz? Mideoraita, biblically speaking, the bitul suffices.
Right.
To such an extent that they say, if I take a loaf of bread, I put it on my table, and before it's asur, before it's forbidden for me to own it, meaning before the say the 5th hour of the day, I get up and I announce, this loaf of bread is now hifqir. It's now completely abandoned. As far as my ownership of it is concerned, I renege, and I renounce any ownership of this chametz. It can sit there on my table during the 7 or 8 days of Pesach. I have violated nothing. Mideoraita. And they infer from this that there must be a rabbinic displeasure, discontentment with my bitul. Meaning, the bitul is valid. It wasn't devised, it wasn't meant to be your sole barrier between you and the biblical interdiction of the owning chametz on Pesach. Because if that's the case, everybody can just say, all the chametz that I own, I don't really own it. Khalas. I can leave it in my fridge, I can leave it in my freezer, leave it in my my apartment, my
It doesn't
cupboard.
have to be done in front of witnesses.
Also a good question. At the end of the day, the answer is no. The bitul does not need to be done in anyone else's presence in order for it to be valid. Just like you have the right to make acquisitions, you have the right also to make renouncements of anything that might potentially, theoretically be in your possession. So if I happen to be standing next to you and you say, wholeheartedly, with no reason to believe otherwise, I'm disgusted with my current phone. I have no desire whatsoever to carry it with me anymore. I'm going to leave it here. Whoever wants can find it and take it. I go pick it up. You don't have any rights over it. Okay? You can have said it without you knowing that I heard it, and it would still be valid. If you can prove that you said it because you were angry but you didn't really mean it, etc., fine. This could go to a beit din. And so suppose just like this, you could be alone, on your own, staring down a big bag of bread or pita chips or whatever, and you can say, I renounce ownership of this pita. I have not violated any sur midoraita. And say, and this is the case, why does the first Mishnah of Masechet Pesachim recommend that each and every one of us take a candle and go looking for the chametz in our house? Anyway, you're going to make a bitul, right? Some of the customers recite this at night. We recite it during the day. We recite it before the end of the time during which you're permitted to own chametz. And you literally do just that. Kol hamira v'chol hamia dekai birshuti any Hametz, any yeast, leavening, like any really super Hametz that basically makes other things Hametz too, that currently stands in my possession, that I saw or that I didn't see, that I removed or that I didn't remove, let it be null and void, and let it be considered like the dirt of the earth. Whoever wants takes it, no one can claim the dirt is mine, the dirt is yours. If it's in your domain, yes. If not, then no. So if this is the case, and we say this renouncement, maybe once, maybe twice, what's the point of doing the bidika? Right? For that matter, everybody who wants to travel doesn't want to check their house for Hametz. It's the same thing. The point that Tosafot make is that apparently Chazal didn't want us relying on this exclusively. They didn't want us to say, we're not going to check, we're not going to search, we're going to renounce the ownership of it, and that suffices. We don't need anything else beyond this. And their point was, maybe there's something to this annulment or the nullification that's not totally convincing or that makes it less than desirable to rely on it ideally. Because if I renounce ownership over something that's going to sit on my table throughout the Chag, true, halachically speaking, if I could fish it out, or I can fire a harpoon at it, and I can pull it out of your house, then it belongs to me and not to you. You can't sue me. There's no trespassing or violating of your property rights, and it belongs to me. How likely is it that someone else is going to come and take it? Maybe the question that we're going to ask is, do we have confidence that everyone who performs this nullification, this renouncement of ownership of the Hametz, is actually doing it wholeheartedly? So if I have a really expensive bottle of whiskey, yeah, in theory, I can say, this super expensive bottle of whiskey, I renounce my ownership over it, and I want nothing to do with it. It would be really cool if no one came and took it in the interim. That way I could go back and regain ownership over it after Pesach. So perhaps because we have a suspicion that maybe your request is not totally wholehearted when you renounce it, you hope that it doesn't belong to you, in which case we're going to say, get it out of the house. In antiquity, getting it out of the house meant throwing it away. So if I have a bottle of beer, or 2 bottles of beer...
You don't have use for it, right? After Pesach, once you said that it's nullified.
So if it's nullified...
It cannot be not nullified anymore after Pesach, right?
After Pesach, I can go back and acquire it. Why not?
No, if we see that it's like
We're selling or nullifying, be careful. If I have a bottle of whiskey...
I'm talking about selling.
Okay.
If I say that it's dust, well, then after Pesach it's still dust, right?
And just like I can pick up your dust, so can Shlomo, so can
Tzvi,
so can...
There is a danger that you can eat it or
Well, the danger, this is one of the points they make. What's the danger? Why did Chazal not want me to rely on taking a brand new, fresh loaf of bread right out of the oven and saying, I renounce ownership of this over Pesach? Perhaps. It's something as simple as, maybe you'll come to eat it. Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll come to eat it, so if that's
Learning
the case...
by candlelight on Shabbat.
Maybe you'll come to tip the candle or to...
It's pragmatic.
Okay, fine.
When I get hungry, I'm going to see the thing.
But continue the discussion in the Gemara. Maybe I'm learning, I'm not going to pay attention, I'll tip the candle. So it's a surah to learn by candlelight on Shabbat, right? Unless you're learning with someone else. In which case, it's mutar. Why? I'm going to tip a candle in front of David Sassoon. Are you serious?
It's not a
He
concern.
knows me. He's going to post it on Facebook, my career is over. So if we're learning together, he won't tip it because I'm there, I won't tip it because he's there. You can easily get around this and you can say, well, these concerns can sometimes be abated. By the way, fascinating discussion. Not 100% apropos to the discussion at hand, but great things to know that'll get people into fights. I love these discussions. Polemical. It says by the Sotah, right? This is a woman who is seriously suspected of adultery, and not kind of, meaning her husband told her, please don't seclude yourself with this guy, and she secluded herself with this guy. Maybe they were playing cards, I don't know. She goes to Beit HaMikdash, right? And she's there. The Kohen has to uncover her hair, white, because a woman with uncovered hair it was disgraceful, at least back in the day. And today it's a badge of pride. Back in the day it was a disgrace. So the Kohen, this is where the Gemara learns, by the way, we have an obligation to cover our hair. How do you know? Because the Sotah has her hair uncovered. What bigger humiliation is this? From here we should know. And probably because she uncovered her hair, she got into trouble. So the Kohen uncovers her hair, which is bad enough. Okay, her clothes are a little bit torn. That's also a sign of humiliation. Today we pay good money for torn clothes, right? You buy jeans that already have holes in them because you can't make holes like this at home. There's no way you can wear your jeans out.
Paint on them.
Yeah, unbelievable how these things get marked up. At any rate, the Mishnah, the Yerushalmi, points out that the Kohen actually has to do tenufa. He actually has to lift the mincha that she's bringing. So she takes a bowl that has a mincha. There's no frankincense, no levona inside this mincha. Why? Because it's a mincha of her husband's jealous accusations. So it's not brought like a typical mincha. Normally the mincha is wheat with water, with olive oil, a little bit of frankincense, the levona. In this case, there is no frankincense because it's not an especially atoning mincha. And the Kohen puts his hands under hers, and he lifts up this bowl up and down, maybe back and forth. So the Gemara says, no, don't we have a suspicion the Kohen is coming into contact with this woman? Something should happen. So the answer the Gemara gives is, if it's literally for a second, you're in Beit HaMikdash, you're the Kohen, she's a woman who's suspected of malfeasance, probably not going to do anything outrageous or crazy, knowing the setting, knowing the circumstance. Just putting that out there. There is such a thing as the Kohen touching a woman, at least in the case of the mitzvah, knowing that what he's doing is mitzvah, Torah commands him to do this, Torah commands her to do this, probably less likely something's going to happen. So are there situations in which sometimes certain concerns are temporarily abated? The answer is yes. If it's a rabbinic concern, then we tend to be a little bit more lenient. If it's a biblical concern, we tend to be more strict. So having a candle burning on Shabbat is great. Learning close to the candle, you might be tempted to tip it. If you have someone else there, we don't have this suspicion. Just like you have other Kohanim in Beit HaMikdash, we don't have suspicion something crazy is going on.
I don't understand that because in laws of Yichud, it states that a man needs to be with two other men at night for fear that if he was with only one other man, he might fall asleep. So, and that's also a Sodeoita.
Huh?
That's Ashkenazi for sure.
Why? Because the Sephardi didn't know how to have a good time. The concern by Yichud is that, first of all, when it comes to arayot, we tend to be more strict. When it comes to illicit relationships, we tend to be more strict. Second of all, it's not clear that having only one other person there doesn't count. The Gemara makes the distinction between people who are modest in general and people who aren't. So if you happen to be sitting next to a yeshiva student or a innocent high school child, so people that you can trust, have you sitting next to someone who happens to live an especially promiscuous lifestyle, let's say for argument's sake a politician. I don't expect the politician to chastise you or admonish you for doing something inappropriate. In fact, he would probably be happy and clap and say, I'm not the only one. So I don't think every situation is the same. The person that is accompanying you happens or is present happens to be someone who's sensitive to these things, they count. And if it's someone who's not, even five of them aren't going to help. In fact, the contrary, they egg each other on and they do more silly things when they're in each other's company. This is generally true, by the way, that when you put a lot of people in one place, the average IQ either goes up or goes down. Meaning either you're contributing positively to fruitful spiritual discussion, you're inspiring each other to do more good things, or you have the mob mentality, where you have lots of people who just don't do anything, and your inhibitions become a bit lethargic.
But wouldn't we be all the more machmir with regard to Hametz? Worst case, Shabbat, Chilul Shabbat is mita, right? In this regard, but Hametz would be
correct.
So wouldn't we revert to the same level of certainty with Arayot?
So the Tosafot make the point that perhaps this is why the Chachamim didn't want us relying only on a perfectly biblically valid concept of renouncement of ownership. In other words, even though midoraita, it's enough that I say I no longer own this Hametz, whoever wants can come take it. At the end of the day, I don't rely only on this because if I know that I have Hametz in my possession, I might be tempted to drink it, to eat it, etc. So if that's the case, then how does it help that we have a sale? Well, sometimes it helps to have more than one Isur, yeah.
Yeah, so that's my question. So we have the original Isur, and then we have, let's call it that safeguard, which is the Bedikat Hametz, and now we have another one, which is the sale. In the case of, I'm just talking about the
are we addressing all the same issues? Biblical issue is it's a surah for us to eat Hametz or to drink it, and it's a surah to own it.
Yep.
So the Isur of owning it is its own interdiction. Right. I can address the interdiction of owning the Hametz by nullifying it, by renouncing it. I don't address the temptation to eat it, because if it belongs to me or potentially to someone else, and Shlomo has a great question coming up, then I have another problem.
I'm just referring to the case of you didn't leave any Hametz at home. okay, you consume it all, so you still do the bedika in case you forgot something. And that's already, I wouldn't call it a humrah, but it's already a step, that is an addition, because you can rely on the bitur. Now we are saying still, I'm just talking about hametz that you might have forgotten or you might not, that exists. Mm-hmm. On top of that, you also want to sell. You want to also do the sale of the hametz. So that's already is a lot of steps that you are taking for something that you probably don't even have, because you check it.
Okay, you still haven't answered all, you haven't responded to all the concerns. If the concern is that you own it, okay, you could address that by renouncing it. The ownership of Hametz is not correct. The ownership of Hametz is an Isur Lau. It's a simple negative. Please don't do this. And I said, no, I'm going to. So I violated for lack of a better word, a simple biblical interdiction, a negative commandment. Don't do this, and I did it. So don't eat non-kosher animals, and I ate one. It's a simple love. So unless there's another punishment specified, you get lashes.
How is it learned differently if it's in the same pasuk?
We're told very explicitly the only karet interdictions on Pesach are for eating hametz or for refusing to participate in the Qurban Pesach. I want to see all the vegetarians come Mashiach. Each and every one of them. I want to walk away with a single file line, stare them down. Go ahead, be a vegetarian. I dare you. It's so karet. You have to eat it. You have an obligation to eat from it. What's that?
Yeah, what happened?
We are in beer. We are recording just.
No offense to any vegetarians out there who
there are millions of them.
may or may not have been. So I got a funny article today. Did you see this? Alessandro Rovati sent me an email. A study that was done in Austria that found that vegetarians are less physically and mentally healthy than people who eat meat.
I read that.
Yeah, so I'll be happy I should put this on my website. Yeah, very funny. But they're more at risk for physical and mental illness. And I thought this way for years. Now I have proof. Anyway.
So then they will have a chiyuv to eat the
Qurban Pesach. I don't know that you can exempt yourself from the Qurban Pesach on any grounds. In other words, if you're allergic to meat, I knew a woman who was allergic. I had a woman come once, she wanted to buy some goat. I asked her why. She said because she's allergic to lamb and to beef. I said, I don't know if goat is going to solve your problem. She says, okay. I spoke to my doctor. He said I can try. She took 2 pounds of something, 3 pounds of something. I asked her afterwards how it went. She said, no, apparently she had the same allergic reaction. I didn't even know what she was allergic to. If it was the fat, if it was protein, if it was something. Who knows? If you're allergic to it and it makes you sick, then we can come up with the typical Talmudic response, Anus Rahamana Patre. Someone who's like by force majeure, he just can't do it. It makes him sick. So he's exempt. So if it's freezing cold outside, you're exempt from sitting in the sukkah. Even if you sit in the sukkah, it's questionable whether or not you fulfilled any obligation. Probably not. Because you had no requirement to do so, because the situation was one that relieves you of any obligation. If I'm allergic to meat, and by the way, I would make the case you'd have to double check this, because if you can bring goat or lamb and you're allergic to one of them, try the other before you give up on the mitzvah so quickly. Just putting that out there. You have an obligation to dispense. Either you do it or you don't. Unless you are physically incapable for whatever reason, and you have to be physically incapable, what are you going to tell the Torah? No, for humanitarian reasons, I don't want to slaughter this animal. The Torah tells you to do this. What do you mean? You're calling the Torah inhumane. Okay, call it whatever you want, but it's your soul, not mine. Take the responsibility on your own head. No one's going to turn around and say, I don't feel like bringing a korban. I think it's cruel that we should kill animals.
No, they can bring the korban, they just won't eat it.
So you have an obligation to eat at least a kazayit.
Make someone else shaliach.
Potentially two, huh? Make some shaliach?
Yeah.
To eat it for me?
Yeah.
How does that work? Tzvi, do me a favor. I indulged on the matzah and the maror. You just eat this meat in my stead. I appoint you my agent to eat, take the whole shoulder if you want to.
Doesn't work?
It doesn't. You can make him an agent to buy something for you, to sell something to you. He can engage a woman to you. He can give a get to you. Certain things he can do. Other things that he can't.
I wonder if you
I
can
make him an
sell
agent to
that
put on
on.
tefillin for me too, but it's my obligation. It's not his.
That'd be good
Send
if
someone
you
to
could
the
sell
mikveh
that
instead of
on.
me,
So
that'd be
you
great.
You find all the vegetarian Orthodox people, and then find a meat eater. And
You assume that this is compatible, orthodoxy and vegetarianism. I would question that. But okay, let's assume. Let's assume.
Rav Kook.
Yeah, Rav Kook was talking about maybe a few millennia into the Messianic era. But
VeganCorbanPesach.com.
Yeah, we
Start
do.
a business.
That's it. Anyway, I eat vegetarians. I think they're delicious. So the point here is a complicated one. What is the isur that we're trying to address, and how do we address it? If the concern is owning chametz over Pesach, okay, it's a biblical interdiction. We would clearly want to take a step back from that. So I can nullify it, but then it's right there. And then I'm tempted with either reacquiring it, so just putting it in my pocket, I've reacquired it, I put it somewhere. If it was in my house and I nullified it, it's one thing. But if I pick it up, I put it in my pocket, I sign a contract that, reacquire, whatever it is, I can find a way to acquire it. Somebody could acquire it for me, this you can do. Tzvi, do me a favor, I'm really hungry, I'm not going to pick up that loaf of bread. Please, acquire it on my behalf. And now I would violate the interdiction of owning it. Potentially rabbinically, potentially biblically. When it comes to the isur of eating it, maybe this is the real concern. If the concern is I might come to eat the chametz, but that's a serious one. Because it doesn't matter whose chametz I was eating. I can steal chametz and eat it, and I can still get karet. I have no chametz in my house, okay? I have burned the walls. I have absolutely not a crumb of chametz in my house. But I walk past Papa John's Pizza, and I go ahead and I take a bite. I don't even pay for it. I steal it. Okay, by the time I ate it, chewed it, and swallowed it, I have karet. What does it matter if it was produced by a Jew or not? If it was my ownership or somebody else's? I'm not going to exculpate myself by eating somebody else's chametz on Pesach. So these are situations that that require addressing, and require resolution. If Chazal were concerned, and this is the question of the Tosafot, why do I have to check for the chametz in the first place? Isn't it enough that I renounce it? Or if I'm going to Acapulco for Pesach, why do I have to check my apartment? Okay, so if Chazal wanted, you just nullify it and you can take off. At least in the case of a couple that's going away, I'm not implying that you are or you aren't, but if I'm going away for Pesach,
I am.
You are. So you're going away for Pesach. So I don't have the concern. I might have the concern that you own chametz, in which case you can address that in more than one way. You can sell it. You can, renounce it. I don't have a concern that he's going to eat it, though. He's leaving his house. He didn't leave with chametz in his pockets. He's going somewhere else. I'm not as offended by him having chametz in his possession that was renounced, because if my major concern was the Yisur Karet, he doesn't own it. And if he doesn't own it, he doesn't have access to it, that he's going to eat it on Pesach. What are you going to say? He's going to eat chametz somewhere else. Yeah, but I can't resolve that. He's going to, anywhere he goes, there's going to be chametz. So if the concern, just 1 second, I'm supposed to say like this. Why are we required to do a check to search for the chametz before Pesach? If it's to make sure you don't own it, sure, why not? But I can address that either by selling it or by renouncing it. If it's to address the concern that I might come to eat it, here I have a problem. If there's chametz in my house, I have a question.
So
then the question becomes, chapter 2 is, what is the sale going to help? What is it? What problem does it solve? Go ahead.
So why do I need to make a bdikat chametz if I'm leaving the house?
So for one of these two potential questions, if it's because we're afraid you're going to eat it, maybe we have a concern. You'll come back early. What happened? They called you at work. There's an emergency. You must come back. I must come back. The house is full of chametz.
But there is chametz everywhere here.
Okay, fair enough. So if you come back and you're going to be in your own home, maybe we have a concern that you might make a mistake. So perhaps Chazal didn't want you to have chametz in your home, at least chametz that belongs to you. In the case of the sale, one additional aspect here is that the chametz is owned by someone else. If I take the chametz, not only am I violating the Yisur Karet, I also stole something. Okay, I hope I'm more afraid of the Yisur Karet than I am of the Yisur of stealing something. But at very least, in other words, what you're telling me is that I can be around chametz and not eat it, and it doesn't belong to me, and I no longer have this concern that I'm actually going to eat from it. It's put in a pantry, it's in a cupboard, it's in a closet, it's been identified as someone else's, it belongs to someone else. Okay, the critics of the concept, at least as it applies to your average, ordinary, everyday Jew who doesn't own a brewery or a distillery, the critics would say, no, the chametz is there, maybe the sale is not a perfectly serious one or a perfectly valid one, and you have a camp today that recommends not selling chametz galur. Everybody suggests you should do a sale, by the way. Everybody wants you to cover it because a sale, pretty thorough. It actually covers things that you may not even realize that you own or that you may not even realize that you had.
But that's what I struggle with, Rabbi. So if the sale is a real sale,
I have the same question.
if the sale is a real
I
sale
haven't
and you check everything at home and you don't have anything to sell and you sell anyway, what are you selling?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I read the form and you asked me where is the chametz. I don't know where is this chametz because I clean up everything. You asked me how much is working. I don't know because I clean up everything. So maybe I forgot something, but how can I value and how can I tell you where it is?
Okay, these are approximations. If I ask you where's the chametz in your house, you tell me there is no chametz in my house. Okay.
So then you don't need to
You
sell
might, we
anything.
spoke about this
That's
last
the
week.
point.
You might potentially, so go buy a loaf of bread so you have what to sell. So
No,
the
but you
sales will
don't
be
have-
valid.
you don't need
Yeah,
to sell.
probably.
No.
I'd rather do that. I would rather
Okay.
keep something to sell.
You don't have an
Sell.
obligation to sell chametz. All I'm saying is that on the odd chance that you happen to have forgotten, a pretzel or a slice of bread in your car or in your house or in your workplace or something, it doesn't hurt to have this cover you as well. What happens if Ryan Callahan shows up today and he says, you know what, I decided to exercise my options on the big neighbor Salon's Hametz. So I'm going to look up his contract. I have access to his apartment. He's going to leave me a number. Somebody has the key. And he feels like going to your apartment. Maybe he finds Hametz. Maybe he doesn't. So what are you going to say? You have $1,000 of Hametz and really there's nothing? So you're defrauding him. What you can say is maybe $1, less than $10. You know, it's an approximation. So he knows what he's going for. If he has to go through 200 contracts or 2,000 contracts, if I were Ryan Callahan, okay, I would go through all these contracts and look for the big numbers. Show me the guy with the scotch. I'm not dealing with bagels and pretzels on Pesach. I want scotch. I'm going to look for the guy who has the most. I'm going to find out where it is, etc. So we make our best efforts, and every year they add something onto this. We make our best efforts to make sure that every conceivable form of Hametz is covered. Things that we know about, things that we don't know about, etc. And Hametz in all of its forms, be they liquid or solid or things that you know that you have, that you don't know that you have. Why? We're stretching the limits of contract law. We're trying to come to, close as we can, to a contract that answers all of these needs. And potentially, yes, if I were to tell you, listen, I'm going to sign a contract, a company goes out of business, for example, okay, liquidation. So if I go to a bankruptcy attorney or bankruptcy judge and I say, well, I want to buy, all the electronics in the possession of this company. Okay, so the judge might say, look, it's not worth our time to go and send someone to estimate how much it is. We assume they have somewhere like 50 phones. Maybe they have 40 phones, maybe they have 60, maybe they have 100. Whatever it is, if I sign a contract that all the phones here belong to me, they're mine. If I sign a contract that whatever you have in stock, I'm purchasing, so it is. It's more, it's less. If you know this at the time that you're buying it, that it's based on an approximation, what harm is done? Who died? Okay, so you're approximating that you have $1 or 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. Up to me if I want to come and exercise my rights over your chametz or hers or his or his. Not the end of the world. It's a good thing to do because at the end of the day, on the odd chance that there's something left or something that escaped your attention, you're covered. It's an insurance policy. I'm not saying you're thinking about this like a guy who's really sophisticated and wants to say, I want to make sure that he knows exactly how many grams of chametz and what it's worth. So, okay, so you're approximating that. It's about this much.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that, in a way, there are already doubts about, let's be honest, about how real is that cell, right? So by doing this, even in these cases, you're really emphasizing that it's a joke. Like, if you really want to do a serious sell, do it seriously. You have scotch, I list the scotch, I list the amount. Like, by doing a sell in an hypothetical case that maybe I have Hametz, and maybe, it's somewhere in my house, you're just emphasizing that it's not a sell, it's not a real document. To me, actually, to your point, instead of being an insurance, it detracts from the concept. It detracts from the validity of the concept.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me address your concern slightly differently. I can tell you stories that because I've been through a few of these different cells and different studies.
And it's also the cell, sorry to add on, but it's really a joke.
So, I understand that many of us feel this way. I can tell you of two Rabbanim we've been in touch with. Rabbi Avidan, for example, in New Jersey, in Fairlawn. He's been there since 1969, right? Summer of 69, like when the hippies were just getting started, Rabbi Avidan was already building a community, the miqweh and the eruv and everything. And he still teaches at YU. He's got to be in his 70s. Tremendous tzaddik. I had a zechut to do shimush by him during 5 years. He was my first, let's say, rabbinic mentor on the ground. Like I had studied yeshivot with other people, but first time I actually had practical rabbinic questions, and he was the Rav that I did most of my training by in the practical sense. So he had a woman, Joy was her name. She was from, I think, Trinidad, if I'm not mistaken. Man, this woman had the Shulchan Aruch by heart. She had spent so much time in his home and knew so much about cooking on Shabbat, milk and meat, about kashrut questions. It's amazing how knowledgeable this woman was. At some point, I think she just had kids or something. She decided she couldn't work there, but she was like a housekeeper. But so when he would call her in order to do the sale of Hametz, he would actually explain to her what it was that she was doing. Don't forget there's another party to this, right? So how you feel about your Hametz is one thing. Right, someone else is the other side of the table. Now, if I email this to Mustafa and I say, do me a favor, can you just, take care of this? Okay, fine, he'll do it. He would actually explain to her, you understand the concept of, property and ownership? And we, the Jews, have some peculiarities to us. We're not allowed to own Hametz over Pesach. We define Hametz, we explain it. And he would basically explain to her that, this is hers, she's welcome to do whatever she wants. And she understands that she's doing, a service, not as a favor pro forma, like pretending. She wants to own all the chametz of all these Jews for Pesach. I mean, you hear this discussion between you come out crying. You're like, well, I wish I once made in my life a decision that was so genuine as what Joy just did for the entire Jewish community of northern New Jersey. She would literally say, I understand, I acknowledge, I appreciate, this is the deal. I would like to own all the chametz that is owned by all the Jews. I'll eat whatever I want. He'd always open a box of crackers or something. Go ahead, in my pantry there's a loaf of bread. Do me a favor, take it out, eat as much as you want. It belongs to you, and that's it. So, if it's properly explained, and you find someone who actually wants to own all the chametz on principle, right? Someone who's like an anti-Semite.
Yeah, but you as a seller, it's not. There's such a thing in gambling. Why is gambling not okay? Because you're taking my money without me really wanting to give it to you.
Okay.
Asmachta, it's
We
called?
can address. Well, asmachta means a lot of things.
You know what I'm
Asmachta
saying?
is some kind of a support for a concept. So we have asmachta sometimes like in the ketubah. That you sign the ketubah not as an asmachta. It's not just using it as like a proof of something that happened that maybe shouldn't happen. Like I'm not using it to waving a contract and saying, here's what I did, here's what I got, here's what I didn't get. When it comes to gambling, the simple halachic response to your question is when you went to gamble and you walked into the casino, you probably knew you weren't walking out with money, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to give I don't want to give the money to.
Well, you actually took the money out of your pocket and bought a bunch of chips. It's really hard to make that argument on your way out of the casino and say, I wish I didn't do the money. You might wish you didn't do it. It's like you wish you didn't spend money at the bar or spend money at a restaurant or spend money wherever. At the end of the day, you walked in and you paid money. Maybe you had a crazy impression you were going to defeat the odds and beat the probabilities, but like everyone else, you probably won't. So you can say,
what I'm
I'm not happy to part with the money at this point, but you made that decision when you walked in.
But what I'm trying to say is
and before you drank, by the way.
I can't acquire something if I know you don't want to sell it. If I know you don't really want to sell it.
That's a delicate issue. That the Gemara talks about what's called lechem tzara'in.
So it's the same thing with the chametz.
Lechem
I'm
tzara'in
giving you the
means
thing.
that means that if someone that's in a case where I know for a fact someone is offering me something but not seriously. So for example,
there's
everyone.
Do you really think the Jews will have chametz? They have like $5,000 bottle of whiskey, mamash from the bottom of their heart.
So you have a job, you make $1 million a year. You invite me and my wife over. Right. Listen. You invite me and my family over for Shabbat, okay? And you spend everything you take out. You bust out the botarga, womaditono. You have shaketri. You have fancy wine. From this, we graduate to 50-year-old scotch. Nice and dear. You name it, you have it. And you know that I am poor. I don't have money. I can't afford it. Whatever. And then after the meal, I say, Shlomo, you guys crushed it tonight, man. I mean, you destroyed it. I'm sick. I'm going to be sick for 7 days until next Shabbat because I ate so much. You have to promise me you're coming next Shabbat. An example. I'm going to give you an example. So you invited me because you're sitting on piles of money and you don't know where to waste it. So you know what? Instead of throwing it away, let me invite him over for Shabbat. For me, this is a tremendous ordeal. It's not so easy. It's I don't have. I can barely pay for my expenses as it is, and now I have to invite you. So the Gemara says here you have to be careful, because it's tantamount to theft. If you know the guy doesn't mean it, he's saying it to dispense some kind of social obligation. Okay, what, you invited me, I'm not going to invite you. Okay, but if your circumstances are different, my circumstances are different, and you and I both know this, it's like in a way I'm asking you only to make myself feel good, and you decline. It's like I'm saying, please don't take me seriously, just save me the embarrassment of having to acknowledge that what you did for me, I can't do for you. I can't put out such a spread, I can't feed you give you the same thing. And if you come to my house and I feel obligated to say to my wife, God, look at this. He spent so much money, he put out such delicious meats and drinks, etc. What am I going to do? Serve him seltzer water? I have to go spend money, I'll borrow money, I'll pay it back, whatever. That's the kind of situation we're looking to avoid. In the case of the Hametz, I really don't want to own it on Pesach, okay? Would it break my heart if somebody came into my house and drank from the whiskey? Well, the way the contract is worded is that any of the chametz that was destroyed or consumed has to be accounted for at the end of the period of the sale.
And paid for.
And paid for. So if you came into my house and you drank a bottle of 22-year-old Macallan, okay, you have to pay for it. I kept stock. I know what I have. And if I can demonstrate that, in fact, you came and you drank from this, it's not like you get it for free. So I'm not losing by entering the sale of chametz because it's a sale. Everything that you consume, you're going to pay me back. And he has the right to do this. He has the right not to do it. Is there anything wrong with having an option and not exercising it? And if I know that the Jews need my help, and I'm going to do them some kind of a service by really owning their chametz over Pesach, I can do this service for them. I'll eat something, and every year I'm telling you, they tack on something else. Go into such and such's house. They'll actually walk with the person. Here's the address. Here's the place. The cupboard is open. Oh, look at that. Have some crackers. Take some pasta. Have a loaf of bread you can take with you, etc. And in theory, you'll pay for it afterwards. You don't get as much of your deposit back at the end of it. But they do it. They do it with the bills and the coins used to make the purchase. So how do you put down a down payment? So I remember that in Bergen County there was a place. Eastern Mountain Sports, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it Eastern Mountain? Yeah. Owned by a Jewish family. So they,
Is it?
the place, I don't even know why, they had a whole bunch of, I know what it was. They had like a whole stock of these little nutrition bars, things that people take with them when they're hiking. Anyway, the place estimated they had something like $1.5 million worth of chametz. It's inventory, you turn it over, you do. So, all these contracts for the sale of chametz, $100, $200, $50, $300, $1.5 million was like slipped in there. So they have 10 different locations. Each location has a whole stock of a whole bunch of different things of chametz. So I'm willing to sell you the chametz at fair market value. To me, it's inconsequential if I sold it to you in the store, if I sold it to you through the sale of chametz before Pesach. I get my money back. So what's the big deal? I don't care. I don't want to own it. In fact, my dream as a store owner is to sell all the chametz I have in stock. I'll buy more. And if that's the case, I'm happy to enter into this. If you found someone who's happy to solve this problem for you, you do anything wrong. Can you find funny ways to do this? So even this, when you put down a down payment, $1.5 million of chametz. So Joy would come, Joyce, she would come and she would bring with her it would be like $21.58. So it isn't even like, I have $1 in my pocket, take it, Okay, a certain sum of money. It was a little bit more precise. Everywhere they can, they try to find these little catches, to make it a little bit more meaningful, more official. We have a handshake on it. We lift she does a kinyan kanal, just like we did before, where she does hagbah. She raises something to demonstrate. She acknowledges, explains to us explicitly. She knows what it is that she's purchasing, what she acquires, that she owns it. She walks out of there with like a suitcase full of contracts. Up to her. She wants to eat it. She's welcome to. My house is open. I'm doing this for real. It does help to cover things that you might have missed. It does address the fact in a certain way that, not only is the chametz in my house, especially I'm going to eat it, but I know it belongs to someone else. Right now it's sold. It's just an extra barrier of protection between me having an attack and going and cashing in on it. And it happens to alleviate this biblical concern that you might have chametz in your possession. And we mentioned last week also, it could be that you own stock in a company or shares proportionate to something, whatever. They own chametz, they're buying, they're selling it, so it definitely helps to have yourself covered this way. There are nonetheless people who really hold that, it's if you can avoid it, it's better not to sell chametz gamur. Not too much is in writing to that effect. I can tell that Rav Shmuel used to comment on this and say, look, he just said flat out, it's valid, it's legal, it's okay, I do it. He's the Rav Tzfat, the son of the former chief rabbi of Israel, of Mordechai. So he said, it's valid, it's legal, it's kosher, it's fine, it works. I don't sell my own chametz, like I get rid of it. I fill out a contract. I don't keep chametz gamur in my house. He said it's a different feeling on Pesach when you happen not to have anything in your house. So regardless, legal, not legal, etc., it's a different feeling. You come out of it feeling a little bit different. So okay, I'm just saying, don't disparage the people who do it. Certainly, it's something advisable and recommendable for everybody to do. Covers things you may or may not have realized. Do it for real. We definitely take care of this on a sales side. That we try to make sure that it is legal, tender, and valid as possible. and the non-Jew who's acquiring it, by all means, demonstrates in any one of 50 ways that they are serious, they know what it means.
I know a shul downtown that does the sell to a huge freight forwards company.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy who actually buy the Hametz has like 25 trucks or something like that, in a way that, if he really wants it, he can come and take it over, because he has the capacity to do
He
it.
literally could do it, yeah.
He literally could. That's the point of going to him, because he potentially can. That's
Gotcha.
the way they chose him. Because
100%. We just take a quick break if you guys want to have something, and we'll make a quick segue. I want to talk a little bit about the Seder itself, if we can, for a short while at least. Not to retain anyone beyond their time budget.
Is there any issue with coming back into possession of Hametz that you had before Pesach? Like Hametz, is there something that like the interdiction against Hametz that passed through Pesach that you would now come back into the ownership of?
Hametz that was owned by a Jew on Pesach?
You owned Hametz, you
Mhm.
sold it legally, whatever, it comes back into your possession. Is that Hametz like fit for consumption, or is there any?
No, there's no. It wasn't owned by a Jew over Pesach. It's perfectly okay.
Okay. It's not like we have to. Okay.
No.
There's not
If it was owned by a Jew over Pesach, it's a sur for you to benefit from it. But because that interdiction is rabbinic, in theory, if I had chametz over Pesach, I violated the interdiction of owning chametz over Pesach, and if I eat it after Pesach, I violated nothing. Biblically, anyway. Midrabanan, we have this interdiction of not benefiting from chametz that was owned by a Jew over Pesach. Why? To discourage people from keeping chametz over Pesach in order to cheat. So I know that the other guy who sells beer, happens not to have any in stock. I kept my stock and I didn't sell it, but I'll get those. I'll corner the market for the first couple of weeks before I can build up a stock. So to discourage people from doing things like that, we end up rabbinically forbidding people to consume it. But then if you have doubts or questions, etc., it's not so clear. Supermarket shelves sometimes not so clear to identify what was and wasn't. If the place is owned by a Jew who didn't sell it.
Oh, right. So this question comes up with there were a couple of stores in the area, and I remember Rabbi Melman saying, "Go here, but don't go there," because they may or may not sell their chametz properly.
One second.
So that's a problem. Is benefiting from chametz that may have been owned by a Jew in Pesach.
Oh, by the way,
Yes.
Fairway is okay or not?
So
What was the question?
Fairway after Pesach.
Oh.
Yeah, there is a list, if I'm not mistaken, because Rabbi Schwartz is the one who conducts the sale of chametz for all the communities on the Upper West Side. I mean, there are people who go other places, but he's the one who pretty much does it here locally. I believe he himself has the master list of which institutions have in fact taken care of it. Really, you can just assume, let everybody, it's their problem if they sell it or they don't, but the reality is we want to make sure that the places that are commercial or industrial have taken care of this, because otherwise we'll be eating from another. No, so it's important. In general, as the rabbi of a community, you should really be aware of what's going on in your community and know what you can do. So
Where is the list?
he has, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it's posted just yet. I think what they might have is a list of institutions, so restaurants and supermarkets, etc., that have sold their chametz either through the hashgacha that they have. Every hashgacha, by the way, does take care of this. So anyone who gives hashgacha, it's the OU, OK, Star K, Chav K, etc. They all have their own system for selling the chametz of all the establishments under their hashgacha.
Okay.
So places that aren't under a particular hashgacha, for example, Fairway. Maybe Fairway sells some kosher items, some non-kosher items. They might have a kosher meat section that's under a certain hashgacha.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and they have also pastries. And,
Okay, a bakery that's under hashgacha.
Yeah, bakery.
So the bakery itself should be the one on top of the hashgacha that's given to the bakery and to the butcher. At least should make so as well as Marmerstein, yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's very thorough. I'm sure he has his taken
So
care of.
they sell their chametz.
I'm confident they do. Yes.
Okay.
In fact, he might. Yeah. Not a question.
But if we happen to eat,
Not a question. So the other thing is that if you happen to know that there is a supermarket, let's say, I don't know, as an example, because I don't know for a fact it's the case, Associated. We have one on 96th in Amsterdam. So 97. not
It's
clear.
owned by a Jew?
So if it's owned by a Jew, the store is not under hashgacha. Nothing is compelling him to sell the chametz.
Yeah, that's okay. No, but Fairway is owned by a Jew, right?
Okay, so
I think so, that's why I'm asking.
I believe so. If I'm not mistaken, in fact, the whole
I
chain
think
would
it's,
be owned
yeah,
by
I
a
think
Jew.
so. Well,
The
there is no
whole
decoration for
franchise.
Christmas, but there is a plenty for Hanukkah.
Yeah,
So
well,
pretty
that's the
sure
Upper West
it's-
Side.
it's
you
still.
could be Christian and come to the
Yeah,
conclusion
it's crazy.
that you're better off,
Hanukkah, you see it everywhere in Fairway. Christmas, you see
It is in
nothing.
Harlem though.
What's the Fairway in Harlem?
Yeah, there is another.
A
Fairway.
130.
It
He's
is,
not closing
the-
for he's closing for Pesach.
The original one and the big
No,
ones
it's
in
not. But I
Harlem.
want to know if we can buy
And
after
they're
Pesach,
they're
or if we
thin
have to
on
wait.
Christmas decorations.
Okay.
It could just be that they still have that many Jewish clientele.
Rav, so can we buy at Fairway?
Interesting. So yeah, no, for sure. The Fairway that's under Rav Mamar's Gachai, he's very thorough.
Which one is Rav Fairway?
70.
75, 94, and 70.
I didn't know
The
you had
bakery,
Ashgacha.
the bakery
Okay,
is
so
under
it's-
Rav Mamarstein.
So wait, is Blossom Rav Mamerstein also?
I don't know.
Listen, is no.
Huh?
Do you have an Erkafa?
They have a
Yeah,
shkicha.
okay.
It's,
ITC.
Ah,
yeah,
yeah.
International Kosher Council.
I wanted to text you.
Ah, yeah, I heard about this one.
'Cause it's open on Shabbat, and a lot of people say no, but then like we really want to try it.
In theory, if there were, we can talk about this.
Vegetarian
If there
before
was
the
a
vitamin.
contract. There's a contract that can potentially.
No, no on Pesach during the week.
Yeah, I'm
Just their
saying,
Ashgacha.
in theory, they could sell the store to a non-Jew over Shabbat, like rent the store to a non-Jew over Shabbat, where he pays them a certain amount of money in rent, and they are open for business. So it could be that they rent it to him for $100 or $200. It could be they rent it to him for $50,000, $60,000. Whatever it is, it's rented.
Do you?
So that would be publicized. The Hashgacha should say this somewhere on the
That's the
certificate.
Shabbat. You mean the food itself?
Do you eat IKC Ashgacha?
I don't eat out all that much, to be honest with you.
Huh?
I honestly don't eat out all that much. It doesn't come up. Like
No, but
we
you know
don't-
the Ashgacha IKC.
I have heard of it. I don't know to tell you.
What would
that
be the
I
question? The
ever
question would
actually-
be the leafy vegetables
And by then,
No, can you eat there?
or the bread.
It's pasta. It's cooked.
It's not even.
Well,
There's
they
no
cook
Mashiach in
things.
the house. There's literally
There's
They
no
nothing.
have,
Mashiach.
they have leafy products. They have.
The what?
They have leaves. Anybody checking these things?
Like the lettuce or
They
the
have leaves
broccoli.
and they have oil. So imagine they're running out of oil. There's no one's gonna say, "Oh, let me check it." Or you brought back.
Vegetable oils, you can make a certain case for. I'm saying leaves. Leaves. If they're selling, if they have basil, lettuce, cabbage, etc. If it's not shredded, it's a little bit complicated. Okay. Anyway.
Other
Sure.
question.
Okay.
Sorry. For the sale, can you sell anything that is not like that whole package? Something that is already.
Yeah, this is
How
one of the
fused
one of
or-
the questions that was
I
raised
know, I
about
forget
the,
every
about
year.
the sale. No, so there are those who wanted to say, who would buy like an open package of bread. Okay.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, in theory, you could make such a case, and in theory, I could say, okay, if I walk into your house, you wouldn't give me a slice of bread from an open loaf. So I wouldn't go to a supermarket and expect to buy an open package of something. If I know that I'm buying some private individual's cache of chametz, then yeah, I probably would.
Okay.
Take whatever's open. So, open bottle of whiskey. Why? Chaval, I should open a new one. I'll just take from the one that's open. At a bar, you're offended if they don't open a new bottle of whiskey for you. You personally. So, maybe.
I
little
am.
bit.
but-
You reserve your critique. Yeah.
Two questions. So you said that benefiting from chametz that was owned by a Jew over Pesach is a sul mid'Rabbanan. Does that mean that we are?
Again, in theory, if I had chametz in my possession over Pesach, I violated Isur Midoraita. As soon as I make Havdalah, I eat it. I didn't do anything biblically wrong. It's not a surah to eat chametz after Pesach.
Biblically.
There's a rabbinic interdiction
You said
not to
Midoraita.
consume chametz that was owned by Jews, at least for sure, before during Pesach.
So, given that is so, does that mean that we are then obligated to check each of the establishments that we go to buy chametz from, or can we say we didn't know whether or not it was or was not owned by a Jew, so we're not really in violation of anything?
There's a general halachic concept on this topic of isurim, items that are forbidden, and how we navigate or negotiate the interdictions. The general rule is, and this is a Talmudic expression, "Kol hechad efshar lebarurei mebarurinan." Right? Wherever it's possible to check, we check. Where it's impossible to check, we don't check. They have this app now, Gemach Heshan app, that you're supposed to be able to take a picture of the barcode on any given product, and it can tell you, based on the lot number, when the wheat was harvested.
No way.
You ever heard of this?
No.
It's I don't know that it's free. It might cost money. So why not show up when you look up
You'll save that money in time, 10 times over.
In terms
Well-
of nishmatic damage.
Yeah.
So the question is what's the obligation that you have to verify something to such an extent? And sometimes we're not so keen on verifying things like doubts. I'll give you a not so funny example of this. What happens if, this is a bad example. I'm just putting that out there. This is a bad example. What happens if a woman is married and she's not so faithful to her husband? Okay? Maybe he's a politician, maybe she is, maybe they both are. If she gets pregnant, and it's pretty public that she had a consort of some kind. Maybe she's French. That helps. Then, no offense to any women French at the table. It's what it is. They're very public about these things. France, or for that matter, Italy. But we beat up on David a lot, so I gave him the night off.
We're getting better about it.
Yeah.
Change presidents and
Change presidents, right? That's it.
he's a saint.
We threw him under the bus, and everything else is okay. He was the last of the corrupt Italian politicians, and Baruch Hashem, we've purged ourselves of this scourge on humanity. Okay, so if it's known that a woman has been unfaithful to her husband, the question becomes, what is the nature of a child that she might bear? If she has a child, is this child going to be assumed to be from the husband or assumed to be from the adulterer? So effectively it's a sfik mamzer. So the Gemara tries to resolve this in favor of the child not being a mamzer. We try to rule very leniently when it comes to mamzer in general. So maybe we can assume that it's harder to commit adultery than it is to work things out with your husband. I'm not sure. This is the assumption at the time of the Gemara. Fine. Shalom Bayit was always difficult. But let's assume it's easier to commit adultery than it is to work things out. Sorry, that it's harder, because it means getting out and not getting caught and not doing whatever. So the Gemara says, no, we have to assume that the majority of the time the husband's in the picture. So Tzvi has an interesting question. What happens if I can go down to a local forensic biologist and we can do some kind of a DNA test in order to verify the paternity of the child?
Or if the woman knows.
Or the woman knows, yeah, that's...
She can know.
Maybe we don't want to
ask
know
her.
what the
No,
woman
but-
has to say. Right, in other words, well, it's a serious question. I had this question once, this came up. Not me personally, we look at me like had this question come up. You're Italian, you assume everyone else is. Right? So I had this question. It wasn't a happy situation. It involved a couple that, in fact, they were both previously married, and they were both exploring other opportunities. And she herself said, I know that I got pregnant from the guy that I'm currently married to, the second husband, and the question was, what's the halachic status of the child? So right away she said, okay, no problem, I'll go get a DNA test if you want, because I promise you it's from the second guy and not from the first one. Bidin said, no, don't get any DNA test, it's fine.
You didn't want to?
No, absolutely not. We're going to assume that the father was the husband, because chances are it's, again, based on the Gemara, the Talmudic concept, it's probably harder to commit adultery and get away with it than it is to just be with your husband. So we're going to assume that was the case. We would prefer not to verify this, resolve this doubt. Sometimes doubt is not a bad thing. It can work in your favor. You have a situation like that.
So you rather keep the doubt than taking a chance to be sure that he's a mamzer?
So we're a little bit off topic, but yes, the
No,
Torah
it makes
forbids
sense to
us.
me. I understand.
The Torah forbids us. So there's an upshot to this. The Torah forbids us from marrying mamzerim or mamzerot, but the language of the pasuk is lo yavo mamzer b'kahal Hashem, gam dor asiri lo yavo lo b'kahal Hashem. A mamzer is not permitted to enter. We understand this to be married into the congregation of God, even the 10th generation, meaning and anything beyond that as well. So there's the Gemara says Masechet Yevamot, mamzer wadai asar Torah v'lo mamzer misafek. What the Torah forbids is an absolute, certain, total mamzer. There is such a thing as mamzer midrabanan or mamzer misafek. If you really want me to get into the details, I can explain this. I mean, not the most pleasant of situations or topics for discussion, but it's not impossible to conceive of a situation in which another bad example. Oh, I guess it's doing this to me. there was a situation in, I think it was Mississippi, where there was a girl went to a frat party and probably,
Fraternized
You
at
get-
the frat party.
what's that?
She fraternized at the
Fraternized at a frat party. Okay, so anyway, it was a little bit difficult to ascertain, and naturally she got pregnant, so a little bit difficult to figure out what had happened. They did a DNA test and they established the paternity of the child. Problem was that there were two fraternal twins that were both there, and apparently neither one of them was very observant. They were Jewish at all, but these weren't like tefillin wearing guys. So the court could not identify either one of them as the father, and therefore she made out with no paternity, no established paternity. It's because they're both identical twins. we have to change the topic. Anyway, the point though, and it was an interesting one, is that like, what if she were married? This is what a rabbi thinks about when you hear these things in the news sometimes. Like, okay, that's a very interesting question. But the Gemara asks something like this: what if she was married to one of these guys and she couldn't tell? I don't even want to know why she couldn't tell, but let's assume that she lives downtown. She ended up wherever she ended up. She couldn't tell who was the father of the child. So maybe it's the husband, maybe it's the twin brother. Even DNA wouldn't help you in this case because the DNA is identical. So you might have a sfek mamzer, as again, if she was married to one, if she was not the other, if one of them was a surah to her for some other reason. So there are certain situations that we should try to maintain the doubt, so as not to have to make a determination that's deleterious or detrimental to society. There is such a thing. Okay, just one of those situations in which doubts can
Go back
alter
to the
working
Isum
out
Da'olam
in
of the
favor.
Hametz
So-
in the stores.
Okay, so the
here
question
you
is,
can
how
check.
far do I have to run in order to verify that the product on the shelf is not kema hadash, or that it was a store that was owned by Jews? So the ownership of the store is easy enough to check. And really, 99% of the time, we'll hold it by the Talmudic rule of anywhere that we can check, we check. Why? What's the big deal? We mentioned things like shredded leaves or ground beans, like hummus. Nobody checks those things, even if there are insects there. And I hate to break your heart, there probably are, at least in a certain proportion. They get whipped up and ground and chopped and they become null and void. So I don't know for a fact that there's an insect in any given bag of beans. And even if there were, I don't have an obligation to check because of what I'm nullifying is ultimately even a doubt. It's not even. It's like I can't throw insects in there intentionally and wish them on my enemies. It'll get mixed and ground and chopped, and so no one's going to know or be able to identify what's going on. So that's a kind of doubt that we say, okay, let's just leave it as a doubt. I don't know if there's something there to begin with, which means I can't for sure be accused of trying to intentionally nullify or negate some kind of interdiction. It's not my goal. The question is, if there's a doubt, if there's something there, do I actually have to check it? And in fact, it's the same answer we give to the mamzer. Probably you're better off not investigating too thoroughly so that you don't come up with a situation that creates more problems than it solves. But when it comes to Hametz that was owned over Pesach, if you can verify easily enough the status of the owner of the store, or if you have a list that has easy access to it, fine. I can avoid shopping at Fairway, Associated, Gristides, whatever. For how long? I don't know, a week, maybe. Or I go to a place that I know for sure sold their chametz and I avoid the one that for sure didn't. How long does it take for items to come off the supermarket shelf? This is New York City. I don't know, a day? Whatever it is. Already, after a day, I have a pretty serious doubt. I don't know when the cereal came off the truck, didn't come off the truck. Do I have to be the FBI in order to verify? Buy my Cheerios here and not there? Okay, so as long as you can introduce some kind of meaningful doubt, I'm not going to have this problem. I don't know when the bread was baked. Okay, 15 minutes after Havdalah, I can't say I don't know when the bread was baked. 3-4 days afterwards, maybe I can come to the conclusion, this might have been baked from flour they didn't even own before Pesach. Might have gotten a new delivery, somebody dropped something else off, the production from a different lot, etc. So as long as you can introduce some kind of reasonable safek, you don't have to tear your hair out in order to figure out the status of it. So I'm going to apologize that I need to get running. If you do have any other questions, feel free. Everyone else apparently does to call, text, or email, Facebook, WhatsApp. I think that pretty much spans the gamut of all the things that the different modes of communication. But yes, we do get these questions. We try to respond quickly. If you can't reach me, you can reach my wife. Usually she has answers handy, at least.
The best way to reach him, by the way, is between 6:30 and 8 a.m. on 100th Street between.
Probably should I make a these two?
Ouais,
You gotta be the first one there tomorrow.
Can't-
Une
Yes,
minute,
absolutely.
question.
Okay.